probably made him happy. Okay, Joni, you know, I feel like Dr. Phil now. Tell me, why do you perpetually feel like you're behind the eight ball?
I don't know. Things don't go very well.
Things don't go very well. When things don't go very well, why? Why don't things go very well? If you're behind the eight ball, you know, that'll be good. Everybody, let's offer ideas why for Joni things don't go well. No. Okay, so behind the eight ball may feel your world seems to be against me. I don't know why, it just is. But that's one explanation. What might be some other explanations?
I don't have good sense.
I don't have good sense. I make bad choices. Okay. You know, switching from Rowdy to, you know, that may have been a bad choice. You moved on from him. I'm very glad.
I'm up to guild favor now.
Oh, left him in the dust. Rowdy is in the dust. Okay, so behind the eight ball means that you. Now, what would and we're kind of talking about it now. What would contribute? What would it feel like to be behind the eight ball?
Depression. There's no way to
depression.
Move forward.
Okay, no way to move forward. So you're depressed. You're frustrated. Okay, because you're behind the eight ball. Angry because you're behind the eight ball. A lot of what's that? Threatened. A lot of it depends on whether you think that it's the world against you or whether you feel that you're just inadequate. Would determine whether you felt angry and threatened or whether you felt depressed, you know, and sad. Frightened. Because why would you feel frightened?
Scared of what's coming next.
Okay, scared of what's going to happen next. Especially if it's not, you don't feel that you're in control of that. Right. You know, it's not you doing it. Okay. If everything's kind of compounded, yeah, against you. Now, if you're behind the eight ball, or feel that way, what would be some things that you would want to do? What would be some things that you might want to do?
Figure out a way how to get by.
Stop watching television?
The bad
news. Stop watching television. All television?
No, just the
Not
news.
all television, like news.
Oh, stop watching news. Well, from what I understand, if you try hard enough, you'll find news that only provides what you already believe. No. You know, so.
That's true.
And then you just kind of settle in. Don't read the newspaper. It gets your hands all dirty anyway. What are some other things you could do if you feel you're behind the eight ball? Call for help. Have somebody help you. Okay.
Watch Dr. Phil.
Watch Dr. Phil. Yeah, watch Dr. Phil.
And get counseling.
Yeah, come to me and get counseling. And I don't charge a cent for counseling. And but understand, you get exactly what you pay for.
Then that means we should all pray more.
Yeah, we should all pray more. I tell you, if you're coming to me for counseling, you should pray more. Okay, so we're talking about being behind the eight ball, and it struck me as I was working on this person, Aaron Burr, that one could say, and I'm going to have y'all make this determination at the end. It's not a right or wrong answer, but one might be able to make a case that Aaron Burr was behind the eight ball. Whether it was by his actions, whether it's by the actions of others, or whether it's just blind fate. And it seems as though his life was almost determined beforehand.
Chaotic.
Yeah, it was chaotic. And so that's what we're going to look at, and we're going to focus on, or we're going to talk about some of the things and the reason some of these things may have been important in the life of Aaron Burr as he grew and matured and did some of the things that he's famous for. Now, so that we're on the same page and we're starting at you know, kind of a base. What do you know about Aaron Burr? What do you know about Aaron Burr?
He fought a duel.
Okay, he fought a duel.
He was a straight shooter.
He actually fought two duels. Aaron Burr fought two duels. Only one did he have to fire, so he only fired once. He hit what he was shooting at for several reasons that we'll talk about in a little bit. So you know about duel. What else you know about Aaron Burr?
He was a New York politician.
He was a New York politician, which should endear us to all,
Right.
him to all of
Just
us,
like now.
you know, because we love New York politicians. There's nothing more trustworthy than a New York politician. All right, so we've got. He's a New York politician. He was engaged in duels, which may reflect some things about him. What else do you know about him?
He had an inside track to get into college
He had an inside track getting into college. You know when he got into college?
when he was, what, 14?
Yeah, 13 years old. Graduated at 16.
Oh, my God.
So was pretty amazing in Princeton. But he did have an inside route. So what else? But it didn't involve paying for money or building buildings. What anything else? Because that's fine. All right, then with that in mind, let's talk a little bit about Aaron Burr. Now, Aaron Burr was born in Newark, and Newark is a garden place then and now. We all know that. New Jersey in 1756. Now, tell me, that means he's growing up in New Jersey in the late 18th century, right? And so tell me what are some of the things that are going on in America around the time what would you say would be formative years for a person that would have a big influence in shaping who they are?
Trail of Tears took place around that time.
Oh,
No, way later.
later, yeah, like 1826, somewhere around there. But what's happening in America?
Unrest.
Okay, well, what's the situation? Political situation in 1756.
They're talking about revolution, breaking away from England, and starting to form.
Okay, good. English. So America is what? The Americas, or at least what becomes part of the United States. They're colonies, right? Colonies of Great Britain. Okay. Now, what would you say would be formative years? 14, 15, maybe into 20s. You know, understand he went to college, graduated at 16, so he is making a decision what to do with the rest of his life at the age of 16, which is pretty remarkable. So, you're starting to get some turmoil. Actually, in 1756, Britain is engaged in a war, right?
7 Years War.
Yeah, the 7 Years War in Europe, called what in America?
French and
Indian War with
France.
Okay, so they're in the midst of a war for continent. By the time he's old enough to really be aware of what's going on,
War with the Spanish.
the war is over, right?
But the Britain was also in war with the Spanish.
Right. That's right. But he's finished. So Britain controls
North America.
at least the east part of the North American continent. By the time he's older, and at the same time, Britain is trying to pay for the war. So Britain is doing what? Is doing some taxes because they invested a lot of money in the American colonies. You know, freeing them from
Tyranny.
the concern of the French domination. You know, they invested a lot of money. They want what?
Money back.
Yeah, money back. And we're talking about an economic system called mercantilism, and we'll talk about this in another class I'm doing. Mercantilism, the idea that your trade balance has got to be positive, and you do whatever is necessary to export more than you import, because that's what wealth is all about, which is a policy we've gone back to in a lot of circles. You know, this old mercantile idea that we kind of abandoned for 200 years and now is sort of resurfacing, that you judge everything by balance. So Britain is looking to make a profit on the colonies. They want the colonies to enrich their wealth, and the colonies are more than happy to send money to Britain, right?
Yeah, right.
Of course they are, because we are all British, right? We all drink tea and put our little pinky out, so we're all happy. Okay, so we get turmoil. We also have ideas, right?
Well, weren't they were okay with taxes, but they weren't okay because they weren't referendum.
I think fundamentally they weren't okay with taxes, because the idea was, the taxes weren't necessarily going to be spent
On them.
on them,
Right.
on them, okay?
All go to Britain.
Yeah, which shows that things haven't changed much. I'll pay as many taxes as you want as long as I get back more, from the state. As long as I get more than I pay, I'm okay with that. But if Ken gets any of it, I'm not okay with that, because he don't deserve it, not like me. So, and it's the same kind of philosophy. All right, so he's in a turbulent time, right? In New Jersey and close to New York. Okay. Now, some interesting things happen with Aaron Burr. He is a descendant of, and this guy is, do anybody know who he is? Jonathan Edwards. Jonathan Edwards. You don't know Jonathan Edwards? Let me tell you, you could get a good flavor of who Jonathan Edwards was by his probably most well-known sermon, because he's a preacher. And the sermon, the best-known sermon from Jonathan Edwards, had the catchy title of Sinners in the Hands of a Loving God, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. Sinners in the hands of an angry. Wow. Sinners in the hands of. Listen. Sinners are like scurvy spiders dangling over the fires of hell. And God holds the web. So, keep on sinning and do what? Make God's day. All right. So, Jonathan Edwards, super Calvinist, really harsh, gives Calvinists a good name. Sinners in the hands of the angry God, ready to drop people into hell in a heartbeat. Now, this is his background. His daddy's a minister. Now, what does that say? What might that tell you a little bit about Aaron Burr's background? How is that going to influence the man he's going to become? We know he's living in a turbulent time, political time, that wasn't turbulent before. All of a sudden they've shifted from the enemy being the French. You take the French out of the equation, you got to have an enemy. The French are gone. You got to have somebody on the other side. So you got turbulence there. You've got granddaddy, daddy, strict Calvinist minister. How's that going to influence him? What would we expect, or how might we expect this to shape the life of, or the development of Aaron Burr?
It's not like he's going to have too happy of a life.
Okay, he's not going to have a lot of fun. As I said to you, what's that? Okay, good. That's a real possibility. You look at, I've told you before, the unique thing about Presbyterians. I told you the unique thing about Presbyterians are Calvin. Presbyterian or Calvin. We can do anything we want. We just can't enjoy it.
You don't have any rhythm.
Yeah, we can't. Yeah, rhythm is something else we gotta struggle with a little bit. But I mean, that's the environment in which he's living. Now, on one hand, he may say, "I don't want this," right? So I'm going to rebel against it. So that's a real possibility. Or he may embrace it. He could be accommodated. I mean, that's the way he was raised. So he could. Even if he rebels, he's carrying what? Little bits and pieces with him. Okay? So as we, and if you think about it, how might this, being raised with this strict teaching, you are a son. And God is ready. You can't move your teeth when you say it. It's more fact. God is ready to drop you into hell.
Gotta be depressing.
Gotta be depressing. How do you start viewing yourself?
Bad.
You don't view yourself as very good, right? Okay, why don't you view yourself as very good?
Because it was being told.
Oh, okay. What are you being pounded on constantly, even if you rebel against the concept? And by the way, eventually Aaron Burr will become an atheist. He gets very close to some Unitarians, but at the end becomes an atheist. So he's rejected the doctrine, but what self-image might he carry with him? Okay, a sense of lack of worth, right?
Yeah, no self-esteem.
No self-esteem. So if you've got a person who has a lack of self-worth, low self-esteem, what might they spend their entire life trying to do? Okay, maybe to prove that that's not true. You know, maybe to strive but never reach what you want, but constantly try
They'll
to,
never reach what they think they want.
or never reach what they think they
Because they, in the eyes of people, he's always judging himself in the eyes of other people.
Okay. So he's got turbulent time, strict upbringing. Poor Aaron Burr becomes an orphan at 17 and 58. Father dies in 1757. Mother dies 1758. Okay.
So
So
Jonathan Edwards is his grandfather.
So he becomes an orphan really early. Now, yes.
He's only a couple years old. How much influence can he have?
Oh, yeah, okay. So when he dies, the parents die, what happens to little baby Aaron?
He's adopted by Jonathan
Go to
Edwards.
grandparents.
He goes to his grandparents. He goes to his grandparents. So all of a sudden he is now add orphan to this equation. So we've got a person who is born in turbulent times. We've got a person who is coming from a strict lineage with a lot of demands on that lineage, because Jonathan Edwards is a rock star in the early church, and Aaron Burr is, how might that shape? What might we expect to see later?
You're going to feel abandoned.
What's that?
You're going to feel abandoned.
Okay, there's a sense of abandonment.
Even though intellectually you know what happened, you're still going to
Okay.
He's very vengeful because he feels he's been wrong.
Okay, so you're carrying around this a desire to be a chip, right? He's maybe carrying around a chip on his shoulder. The world has treated me poorly.
So why should I be?
Of course, on the other hand, with this strict, God's going to drop you into hell. Maybe it's, maybe this is what I deserve. Maybe this is what I deserve. So we've got all of this, but all of this is working inside of him. So nobody knows what's actually going on inside of Aaron Burr as he's growing up. He didn't write anything about it. But you start looking at certain things in his early life, and you start saying, well, when he's older, maybe he's going to be an overachiever. Maybe he might be an overachiever. Or maybe he'll seek success, but not necessarily in the best, most positive way. Maybe he'll always have a little chip on his shoulder, that see the world as against him. And maybe that's the way he'll interpret things that happen. There's a wonderful principle called self-fulfilling prophecy, and every teacher in this room knows about it. If you think a kid in your class is a problem, what? He is going to be a problem. He is going to be a problem, because who's going to make sure of it? You are. If you think he's a problem, you want to be right, he's going to be a problem. That's just self-fulfilling prophecy, because you're going to watch him all the time. And he'll act up. I'll guarantee you he'll act up. Okay? So it may be, if I'm expecting bad things to happen, maybe I'm going to be looking for it and maybe misinterpreting good stuff. Like I said, he graduates from Princeton University in 1772 at the tender age of 16. Okay? Now, Princeton University, good Calvinist university. Good Calvinist university in New Jersey. Given his lineage, what occupation should he assume?
Ministry.
He should be a preacher, right? You know, he went to the perfect place to do it. He has the perfect lineage. He was raised in it, for crying out loud. And that's what the intention was. But he's 16 years old. And by the time we're getting to 1772, what's occurring around him?
Talk of revolution.
You know, yeah, how have things changed from 1756 to 1772?
Serious talk of revolution.
Now we've got, we got more serious talk. You know, there's the greater tension, you know. And for a young man who must be intellectually, we can at the very least say that he's intellectually intelligent, gifted. You know, that this may trigger thoughts, right? So Aaron Burr, young man, real young man, you know, 1772, out of college, choice. Do I want to be a minister just like my family has always been, or do I want to do something else? And what would that something else probably be?
Take part of the revolution, get involved.
Okay, if I want to go into politics, we're not at war yet, but I want to go into politics, what profession should I choose?
Lawyer.
Lawyer.
A lawyer.
You know, I've got Burr's face it. Do I go into ministry or do I go into law? Bright young man, turbulent time, overachiever, felt abandoned, needs to
Already behind the
succeed.
8 ball.
Yeah, that's why I started it that way. Needs to succeed, chooses to do what? Go into the law. And so heads over to Connecticut to start reading the law. And remember, you know, going to law school wasn't how most lawyers became lawyers. They did what? Yeah, they were like apprentices. They read the law under, you know, another lawyer, and that's what Aaron Burr does. You know, so he graduates when he's really young, reads the law, has the expectation of becoming a lawyer. 1772, things are happening, right? Aaron Burr is in the Northeast, right? And that's where things are happening the fastest, right? So he's exposed to a lot of different ideas. Who are some of the people that he's exposed to?
Samuel Adams.
Samuel Adams, right? And Samuel Adams is
John Adams' brother.
John Adams' brother.
Kind of a firebrand.
Yeah, absolutely, firebrand. Okay? So Samuel Adams, independent, boom. Who else is he exposed to? Well, John Hancock is up there, and he's coming sort of from the other side because he's wealthy. You know, maybe one of the richest men in America, definitely the richest man in New England. And he's beginning to think that maybe independence is the way to go. James Otis, who is another firebrand. You know, John Adams, Samuel Adams' brother, who is a firebrand, only he's little. He's how little.
Wasn't Burr a short guy? 5'4", something like that?
Yeah. Burr was short. Yeah. So he, which may something else may contribute. Although a lot of people were short. You know, they weren't as tall as they are now. You know, so short. Yeah, we're much taller.
That didn't help his self-esteem either.
But yeah, he was. Okay, so we end up
Was he reading like John Locke?
reading John Locke because that's part of the law, right? And he's being exposed to all these ideas, and he's at the center of where rebellion is forming, right? Fermenting. Because where is it going to break out? Man, it didn't want to break out in Charleston, South Carolina. Where's it going to break out? In Massachusetts, right around Boston, right? And so we have this, and New York is by far the biggest city in the colony. You know, we have this breaking out, and Burr is there in part of it. You know, right around where this is happening. Being exposed to all these ideas, you know, overachiever, may feel as though he's been dealt a bad hand, needs the opportunity to prove himself, going into the law instead of the ministry, because ministry is never going to be the way to prove yourself. You know, that's just not going to be the path to do it. Not in the 18th century. You know, now what's even a better way to prove that you got what it takes?
become a military.
Join the Army. Because what is the Army going to enable you to do?
Like,
Going to enable you glory on the battlefield, right? So here's a young man, Aaron Burr, and he's not unique among young men then. Aaron Burr, young man, college graduate, reading for the law, exposed to all this political hotbed, decides that he's going to enlist in the Continental Army, not in a militia unit, but he's going to enlist in the Continental Army to fight. Therefore, Aaron Burr wants to.
Well,
Yeah.
when did the Continental Army actually take place? Wasn't it after the Declaration?
No, Continental Army is going to be organized in 1775.
Okay,
Right around Boston.
okay.
You know, when the Continental Congress appoints Washington to lead the Continental Army. Okay, so he's enlisting 1775. We're right at the beginning. This is going to be the way. Now, if you're going to enlist in the Army to get glory, you want to what?
Be an officer.
You want to be an officer? You also want to what?
be a leader.
You got to fight. You know, if I'm going to go for glory, I don't go for glory doing what? Sitting behind a desk writing, right? You know, I have got to lead men. I've got to fight. Okay, so we've got Aaron Burr. Now, just as you look at his early life, what do you see in this early life that may give Burr directions that he may not even realize? But we can, because we're kind of looking down on him. What do you see in his early life that may give us hints about what's going to happen to him later?
Lot was expected of him.
Okay, Lot was expected of him by whom? Okay, yeah, I think a lot was expected of himself. Well, he doesn't have family. He doesn't have a father that is a judgmental father, you know, but himself, maybe he's very demanding of himself. What else do you see?
I would say he'd have a lot of influences from the founding fathers and everything around him.
Okay, you got a lot of
Because
influences.
he doesn't have a strong family, he would have, that would sort of, he would take that on as the role that he would.
Kind of a surrogate family.
Yeah.
You know, all of a sudden you got a family that's not blood, but
Well, you got
is
Washington.
close. You've got an identification.
Right, you got Washington, you got all of the
Yeah.
important people in the revolution.
You know, there was another one of the patriots who was also an orphan. Which of the other? Do you know the other? Hamilton was an orphan. You know, so both Burr and Hamilton were orphans. Of course, Burr was born here. Hamilton was born,
In the Caribbean.
yeah, in Jamaica.
Yeah.
and came here.
You suppose he thinks it doesn't matter what he does or how he does it, he's going to hell anyway?
Well, it could be. You know, it could be. Now, understand, one of the things that Burr is going to let loose, or at least say he lets loose of, is the idea of God. You know, he'll say, in fact, at the end of his life, he'll tell one of his stepchildren that the crucifixion is fantasy, is all fantasy. A fable, the word he'll use is fable. So he's not going to maintain, it's going to be very close to Unitarians, which have back then, had a kind of a deist view of God, that God is out there, but doesn't do much. You just start, like a clockmaker, started the clock running and just steps back and lets it go. And that's, at best, that's probably how he saw God. So whether he even had a sense of hell or not, I don't know. But that could be in the back of his mind, you know, having grown up with it, in the back of his head.
Wasn't there a number of leaders at that time who were considered deists?
Oh, yeah. Outside of John Adams certainly wasn't. But most of the Virginians were.
Right, Jefferson.
Yeah, most of the Virginians were deists. Because the Anglican Church was far less doctrinal. You know, so you could believe a lot of things and be an Anglican. But pretty hard to believe anything other than Calvinism if you're in New England. You know. So, okay, so he's a soldier. He's a soldier that wants to fight. Wow, he has an opportunity in 1775 because he participates in something a lot of people don't even know about. That one of the early things the United States does, even before the Declaration of Independence, the Continental Army does what? Invades Canada. whoa! You know, they're doing a revolution and they're invading Canada. Now, why in heaven's name would they invade Canada?
To inspire them to the revolution.
Well, they heard they had polar bears, and they wanted to get the polar bears down, and
I thought it's because they had good hunting.
yeah, well, and bacon. They were going after the bacon. So they invade the United States to ferment rebellion in Canada. Okay, there's some problems with looking at Canada as a place that was about to rebel. What would be some issues that should cause a person to say, yeah, maybe not a great idea?
Well, they weren't unhappy with England. They had a big French
Yeah, that's
right north of them.
That's a big problem. The fact that they're invading right into French Canada. And, you know, the French historical background is very different. They're not exposed to, haven't been exposed to the same ideas. You know, this is not prime territory for rebellion. But the United States assumes that
Maybe they will.
maybe they will.
Yeah.
It's worth a shot. And so they send 2 expeditions into Canada, one under a man named Montgomery, and he's going to, they're supposed to meet at the city of Quebec. And another, so you got 2 prongs. And Burr is with this other guy who's leading Americans towards Quebec, goes through Montreal. And his name is one of the truly great American generals in the American Revolution. In terms of pure talent and success. He's leading an army out to meet Montgomery. Have any idea what his name is? Not him? Not Washington? Not Lady? Huh? Benedict Arnold! Benedict Arnold is leading another one out. Going to meet in Quebec. Going to meet in which they do, and they get routed. The American troops end up getting routed. General Montgomery dies, gets shot in the neck. But Aaron Burr, because this is Aaron Burr, does something amazing. He is a lieutenant, right? Lowly lieutenant. He's just one of these guys, and they're fighting, and it's chaos, and people are shooting, and all kinds of that. And Montgomery goes, boom, I took it in the neck, and he falls over. And Aaron Burr goes onto the battlefield and pulls General Montgomery's body off the battlefield. Whoa! That's pretty big, right? You know, bullets are flying all over the place, and he pulls the body of the general. Now, would that be something that would warrant recognition? You would think so. You would think so. It certainly shows bravery, almost a reckless bravery. What's that?
I agree with you.
Yeah, kind of a reckless bravery to pull this guy off, but he doesn't.
Well, not necessarily. That's how you get Medal of Honors. And,
Well, that's right.
And he doesn't know he's dying. He's trying to save his life.
Well, yes. So he gets him off the battlefield, gets some recognition, but the campaign is a disaster. You know, and they limp back. Burr is put on General Washington's staff. Now, what would somebody on a staff, if you were on, and maybe some of you all have been, you know, because I know some of you have been you served in the Army and Navy and stuff. So you may have been on a staff. If you're on somebody's staff, what sort of jobs do you do?
You advise.
Get coffee.
Okay, you advise. You get advice. Like I think it would be better with 2 lumps of sugar versus 1. So you're giving advice. What else are you doing when you're on staff?
Anything that
Planning.
your boss wants you
You're
to do.
planning.
You're planning. You're planning what to do when your boss says, "Get that paper over here." Okay, so you're doing some planning. You're doing some advising.
Research.
You were doing some research.
Well, you're
Protection.
a line officer too, because you could have reconnaissance platoons. Somebody has to.
You could. He is.
Okay.
He is. You know, you could. You're right. But he is. So he is Now this is a guy that wants to serve, right? Wants to fight, because you don't get glory not fighting. And right now, the greatest risk he's running is what?
Ignored.
Being known.
Oh, come on, you're selling it too short. The worst risk. Oh, bring in a chair. Come on in. We got 2 chairs right here.
That sounds like a
All you gotta
winner.
do is sign before you
Here,
get.
Bob. Sit there.
Yeah. All right. The worst risk he's running is, and if you've never had this, it's bad. He could get a paper cut. Have you ever had one of those paper cuts? You know, a paper cut and
How about a quill?
yeah, you could jab his hand with a quill. That would be bad. Splinters on the suit. So he's running a risk. He could get a purple finger for that. So, is he happy on General Washington's staff?
No.
Heck no, he's not happy. And
We had the same thing with Hamilton, too.
same thing with that. All the difference is what becomes really, and that's where the play, it's a fictional thing. Burr is on General Washington's staff. Burr does not want to be on General Washington's staff, because being on General Washington's staff means he's not going to what? Fight and lead men to victory, right? He is stuck in an office. Which I'll tell you, at my age, sounds pretty good. Yeah, that's where I want to be, stuck in an office. But he doesn't, because he wants glory and requests, what's that? Jeez Louise, he's a kid. What does he know? He doesn't know what he's doing. So he ends up getting transferred off the staff, commands a brigade, does something incredible during the British attack on New York. Because remember, in the American Revolution, we're talking about 1776, the British attacked the city of New York. And Washington decides to defend it, and his decision to defend it is a disaster. Because he's got volunteers, and we've got 30,000 British soldiers, and we've got American volunteers that have just been called off the farms. And when the British march in their nice fancy uniform and their big beaver hats, the Americans do what? Run away, sort of like Monty Python. Run away. And that's what they do, run away. And so Washington has a hard time defending the city with people that are looking to run away, right? And one of the groups that run away is a group that's commanded by Lieutenant Burr. But Lieutenant Burr ends up, during when the British are attacking Manhattan, doesn't fight the British, but enables his battalion to escape capture. And does it in a really brave, face of fire kind of way, right? This is in an otherwise disastrous military battle. This is what? This is really good. Hamilton steals some cannons, which was also really good. Burr ends up saving his battalion, which is really good. Now, when you save your battalion in an otherwise disastrous battle, what might you expect? You might expect promotion. Now, before you get a promotion, what do you need to happen? Your commander needs to write it up in his report, right? That Aaron Burr, da-da-da-da-da, and that's how you get promoted. And when Washington writes it up, he doesn't mention Aaron Burr. He doesn't mention Aaron Burr. Which means Aaron Burr is telling his buddies, you know what I did? You know what I did? And his buddies are saying, doesn't mention it, he doesn't get promoted. Now, how would you, if you were Aaron Burr, how do you feel about Father George?
Another slight.
Okay, because another slight, right? that he is being slighted, if he feels, if there's part of him that says life is just unfair and more unfair to me than it is anybody else, reinforces that. If it's everybody's against me, reinforces that. It's not reinforcing anything good, right? Okay. So Aaron Burr ends up.
Why wouldn't he call Washington on that?
Well, see, the problem was, and
Since he was on his staff, he had to know.
the problem was, the cell phone connections were really bad. Because the British had disrupted, had torn down a lot of the towers.
In other words, one had to write
That's exactly right. And one had Sprint and nobody knew why. And that was the problem. Yeah.
Well, how did the word get out?
How did the word get out? Well, because his soldiers knew. And see, what ended up happening, this is what bothers. It wasn't that Washington didn't know that it happened. He just chose not to mention it. And so this causes Burr to, although he'll continue to support Washington. Will support Washington militarily during the war, speak against them, although a lot of people did speak against Washington. He did, politically, they're going to really separate in the 1790s.
That was a serious question. Why wouldn't he ask for a one-on-one?
I don't think it really happened in those days.
Yeah.
There was always a stratification.
I believe it didn't happen.
Yeah. But it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't happen.
Might not happen today.
He's promoted to he wouldn't today. Promoted to Lieutenant Colonel, 1777, serves in Valley Forge. So we're looking at a guy who is not in the easiest places, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and while he's serving, he's responsible, he's commanding troops in New Jersey. And what the British end up doing is they will raid into New Jersey. They're not looking to invade, but they're looking to raid. And it becomes part of Burr's job with his troops, and he's commanding about 300, is to address these little incursions that the British are making into New Jersey. Yeah.
Well, how did he get promoted to Lieutenant Colonel? That'd be a high rank.
Yeah.
So how did he go from being unrecognized by Washington to being promoted in 1777?
Because he's that good a soldier.
Where'd the recognition come from? Where did?
I don't know. Somebody's promoting him, but it wasn't
Washington.
this specific. The problem was that this specific incident didn't appear in Washington's reports, and that would have made an immediate difference. And even if it had there's some resentment. Why would this be included, but not what I did? And so
Maybe
what
that's
we
a
end up
makeup.
having. Huh?
Maybe that's a makeup call.
Could be. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, we has to resign in 1779 because he has bad health. So once he resigns, then what? After he resigns, the possibility of getting great military glory is
Unless he goes back.
less likely, unless he comes back. Now understand that's what he's doing. But when he resigns, what does he go back to doing? He goes back to the law, right? Okay, so he goes back to the law, but not in the army anymore. Now, he's not in the army anymore, bad health. The people that went in the army with him are still in the army. And the possibility of glory is still there, and now he's been relegated to the sideline. Now he's on the sideline. While other people have the opportunity to advance. And it's right then that he marries a woman named Theodosia. Now Theodosia, her background is really, anybody know any of the background of Theodosia? Theodosia, she is, Burr meets Theodosia in New York. And Theodosia is, but there's a problem with Theodosia. A problem.
Probably not
Well, yeah, not only, that's a little problem, she's not Presbyterian, which means she knows how to have a good time. Theodosha has another problem.
married already.
She's married. Oh, you sort of say, oh, yeah. All right, that's a little problem. Yeah. Now, let's raise our hands. For whom would that be a problem? Oh, you're supposed to, yeah. Boy, nobody raised their hand. I'm a little surprised. Okay, well, she's married. And what makes it even worse is she's married to British officer. She is married to a British officer who is serving in South Carolina. So he is out of sight, out of mind. And so while he's in South Carolina eating grits, okay, Theodosha is.
New York City.
Somebody said cooking grits. Yeah, okay. Let's make that kind of, sort of questionable. We can make that sort of a.
She's sipping tea.
Yeah.
Burr know
yeah.
that she's married?
What's that?
Does Burr know that she's married?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
Burr knows she's married. Burr knows she's married. And but he has this relationship with her. Her husband is down in South Carolina. Yeah, he's eating grits. She's cooking grits, if you know what I mean. I don't even know.
Sipping tea.
I don't know. Do you know what?
Drinking champagne.
Yeah, drinking champagne, sipping her tea with her finger out. If you know what I mean. So he's there. So he meets her, and her husband dies in South Carolina. As a British officer. Understand, people were dying all the time. What would take in most of the people who died in illness? He gets typhoid in South Carolina because that's what people got in South Carolina. So he dies. She's now
There I am.
here I am. In fact, according to the people of the time, that's what she said to him. Here I am. Now she has children though. She has 2 children. She brings the 2 children into marriage, but she and Aaron Burr get married, and they get married and they have a child, and their child is named Theodosha. They would have named the child Aaron, but that would have been a dumb name for a girl.
Depends on the age.
Yeah, that's right. If it had been a boy, they'd have named the boy what?
You could have started with an E instead
Yeah,
of an A.
Theodosha. Made it tough.
Theodore.
You could have started having E or a...
Yeah, that's right. Could have started an E, a trend. So they have a child. Now, remember, think about his background. What's his background? He was a Calvinist. Ooh, Calvinist. Calvinist. Well, like I said, Calvinists could probably, have a relationship with a married woman. They just couldn't enjoy it. Yeah. Okay, but they should. They should. Wait, look at my face. They should. All right, so we got that thing. What else about it? He's married this woman, having a little baby girl.
She's married to an English.
Okay, married to an English.
You don't know what her sway is.
Oh, that's right. She could. That was what got Benedict Arnold in trouble. His wife. I'm sorry, ladies, that sounds sexist, but his wife had spent a lot of money. Lots of money. And wanted to spend more than he was making as a brigadier general in the Continental Army.
Where'd Burr get his money?
Where did Burr get his money?
Where?
Well, when he's a lawyer. So he's got an income as a result of the law. And he also becomes the heir of his family. So he carries his family. But he's not wealthy by any stretch of the imagination. Neither is she. She's not wealthy. Because the wife of a British soldier, and he wasn't a high officer. British officer, they weren't making So, but they get married. That's a great question, though.
Was Aaron Burr an only child? I know his parents died when he was 2, but
No.
did he have older siblings?
Younger. Older. No, he had older. Had one older sibling. I'm not sure whether boy or girl, but had one older sibling. But I think he had a sister, and they were in fact divided after his parents died.
Go live with that grandpa.
And it wasn't, they were sort of passed around to more than one family.
Oh, so he didn't just.
So he
live
didn't
with
just have
them.
one, but he ended up being passed to two. So he had lived with two during his early life. Now, he's an orphan, right? He's got this little baby. How's he gonna feel about this little baby, knowing he was an orphan?
He's gonna worry about leaving her.
Well, we don't know historically because he didn't write about it, but that's kind of what
What you would think.
we'd expect it, right? If he was an orphan, since he was an orphan, he wouldn't want his daughter to be an orphan. So his perspective may begin to change a little bit, right? Okay. So we've got Aaron Burr. Now we've laid some of the foundations, right? Some of the ideas that are going to influence Aaron Burr as we move into the future. To this point, what would you say about his career trajectory?
On the rise.
Okay, he was in pretty good, right? He was, and that's the Theodosia. His daughter, his wife dies after his daughter's born. Jeez Louise. That's really depressing, but normal, but not unusual.
Yeah.
So now you think about that orphan jazz, she's lost her mother. She has only him. So if we got a lot of the seeds that are going to influence what Burr does later. How would you describe his career trajectory to this point?
On the rise.
Okay, on the rise.
An American.
Okay. An American, reasonable. Okay. All right. We're going to take a break. 5-minute break. What you want to do is, because there's going to be a lot of people hitting the bathroom at the same time. What you want to do is you want to push and shove, because that'll make it go faster. I would tell you, ladies, the men's room is going to be less occupied than the women's room, but you'll have to survive the men's room, which is never a pleasant thing. So, go. 5 minutes, go.
Take 5 minutes. Everybody
Somebody to pick up sewer, trash. You need trash removal? Water. New York has a huge problem with water. Huge problem with water. Burr petitions the city government, which is controlled by these money bankers, to give him a charter to form a water company in New York City. And the city fathers and the bankers say, okay, that's exactly what we need. Burr is a skilled enough lawyer that as he writes the charter, he leaves a few things vague. Because he gets approval for his water company and immediately decides that water isn't going to be his principal business. Instead, loaning money will be his principal interest. Which means all of a sudden Aaron Burr has done what? Organized a bank to compete against the Bank of New York, which is Hamilton's bank. He has organized a bank, and he's not doing it to make money. He's doing it to broaden his political power. He's going to take that money and do what with it?
Loan it to the small.
Loan it to anyone who says, I will vote for you. You know, I will support your people. And that's what he does. Until you get enough, he gets enough people in the legislature that they start doing what?
Changing the law.
Changing the law, the property laws. And that's what ends up happening in New York. Now, when he does this, and he doesn't do anything with water. This is supposed to be the Manhattan Water Company. He doesn't do anything with water. He immediately uses it to start loaning money. And Hamilton says, he got me. He snookered me. And that's exactly what he did. That's what he did. And man alive. Now understand, he snookered him by doing what? Which, of course, isn't important in politics nowadays. You know, we've kind of learned to live with it. How did Burr snooker Alexander Hamilton? He did what? Oh, deceive. That's such a nice word. I thank you, Joni. That is so nice. What did he do? He lied. Right? He lied. You know, it was an out-and-out lie. And so Hamilton looks at him and doesn't say,
He just left a few things out.
oh, yeah.
That's not lying.
There you go.
Yeah, I dated a girl that did the same thing. Yeah, she left a few things out. But he lied. And that's going to cause Hamilton to say, you can't trust him.
Right.
You know, you lied to me once, you're not going to lie to me again. You know. So Hamilton, this really ticks him off because it's not only a lie, but it's digging in to Hamilton's power. And Burr ends up exerting far more power in New York City than Alexander Hamilton. You know, his power is limited to the money. Burr has expanded it. Now, if he's expanding power, now we're talking about 1799. What's going to happen in 1800? What's coming up in 1800 in the country? A presidential election, right? All right. Who are that? Now, understand, we don't have anything like the candidate system, you know, we have now. But who are the ones that are really running for election? And what are the two factions? They're not even political parties yet. What are the two factions running against each other in 1800? Okay, you've got on one hand you have Federalists, and who are some of the Federalist poster boys? Adams is a poster boy for federalism, although he's ticked a lot of them off by not going to war with France, which they really wanted.
Right.
Okay, so Adams is one. Hamilton is a Federalist.
Jefferson?
Not Jefferson, but it changes in 1799 because in 1799, sort of the King Federalist dies because the top Federalist is a man named George Washington, and he dies in 1799. So Washington is a Federalist. All of them believing in a strong national government. Tend to favor cities, tend to favor banking, tend to favor industry. You know, those are the Federalists. The other faction, and Adams is leading the Federalists as president, but a lot of Federalists don't like him. You know, Hamilton doesn't like him, you know, because he's not a good Federalist. And Adams is snooty. You know, Adams just has a snooty problem. I'm sorry. If you're a relative of John Adams, I'm sorry. He was snooty. You know, he was just snooty. All right, so on the other side is Jefferson. Now, Adams was snooty, but he was really honest. I mean, he was really honest. Jefferson is a little slick. He's slickish, you know. So you kind of had a question when Jefferson said things because he was really slick. You know, he was good with words. So Jefferson is leading the other factions. They are focused more on small farmers and little guys around. Now, Jefferson wants his faction, they want to win, right? Yep. To win this election, what are they going to need? Votes. They're going to need votes. Now, understand, votes are taken different because in most places they don't have popular elections. You know, so you don't go and vote for president. You know, you don't even vote for electors. The electors are chosen by the state legislatures. So it's really important to have power in the state legislature. Which are the big states?
Virginia.
Virginia's a big state. You think Jefferson's going to do well in Virginia? Yeah, duh. Yeah, duh. He's going to do well in Virginia. What's another big state?
New York.
Ah, New York. Oh, jeez, Louise, that's Yankee. I mean, that's New York. Those. See that commercial with those cowboys? Eating the whatever they're eating, and one of them's eating it from a jar that's from New York. Salsa from New York. Okay, so if Jefferson's going to win, he can't just win with Southerners, right? He's going to have strength in the North, right? Who has some influence in the North? Yeah, Aaron Burr has a lot of power in New York City. Probably the most powerful man in New York City. Aaron Burr. And if you're the most powerful man in New York City, you are the most powerful man where? In New York. In fact, Burr has already been elected senator from New York. And again, people didn't vote for him. He was voted by the legislature. He's senator from New York. Burr is the guy Jefferson's going to have to deal with. And he's part of Jefferson's faction, which is really good. And so Jefferson goes to Burr and says, Aaron, buddy, friend of mine, I would love you to what? Be my running mate. Be my running mate. Now, Jefferson was vice president when he's approaching, because he's elected vice president in 1796, because we were following a unique kind of system where the guy who wins, the guy who comes in first, becomes president. The guy who comes in, and I can say guy because it's got to be a guy, comes in second, becomes vice president. And Jefferson became president. So the loser, his job is to support the winner. It doesn't sound like a good idea, but that's okay. Everybody got two votes, so you'd have to be brain dead not to know. Reserve one vote, so the other guy loses. Comes in second. Anyway, so Burr and Jefferson are going to run for president. Now, understand, Burr was on the ballot. He came in fourth in 1796. Burr came in fourth in 1796. That's pretty good. That was behind Adams and Jefferson and Pinckney. That's pretty good. So Burr's running again with Jefferson. Running is different because nobody campaigns, and the elections really take place in the House, in the state legislatures, because they pick the electors. And somebody's cell phone went dead, and they weren't able to text that, to tell George, don't vote for Aaron Burr, vote for Mickey Mouse, vote for anybody, vote for yourself. We don't care. We just have to have Jefferson with a set number and Burr one less. And the guy's cell phone was dead, and so he didn't get the message. And the legislatures vote, and they count the ballots, and it turns out that Jefferson wins. Adams loses. What's the problem? Burr is tied. Oh no, because everybody gets two votes, but one vote isn't for president, one isn't for vice president. They just get two votes. The one that comes in first wins. The one that comes in second is vice president. So they end up being tied. Now, everybody knew that it was Jefferson that was leading this move. Everybody knew. Well, there was a guy in Georgia that did, but that's neither here nor there. Almost everybody knew that Jefferson was the one who was leading the ticket, right? And that Burr knew he was not the top guy, right? But they come out tied. Now, if an election comes out tied, or if a person doesn't get a majority of the electoral votes, what happens? It goes to the House of Representatives. And it's a little different in the House of Representatives, because the House of Representatives, each state gets one vote. So New York gets one vote, Georgia gets one vote. That's the way it is. That's the way the Constitution says. And who gets that one vote is determined by a vote of the congressional delegation in that state. Okay, so it goes to the House. Now, all Aaron Burr has to do is what? What can Aaron Burr do? He can say, listen, guys, I am not running for president. I was running for vice president. Don't vote for me. I will not accept the office. So don't vote for me. Jefferson's the man, right? Some Federalists who really hate Jefferson whisper in Burr's ear, Aaron, do you realize you could become president of the United States? And Burr says, get out. Get out. And they say, whoa, wait. He said, that's it was a landslide for the Democratic Republicans. They won all the House seats. It was a landslide. Aaron, you know who votes? The old Congress, not the new Congress. And you know what party has power in the old Congress? The Federalist Party. And if you say that you will play with us, we can throw our support to you because we don't want to vote for Jefferson anyway. What do you think? And Burr says, not a bad deal. Not a bad deal. And now understand, he doesn't actively campaign. But he doesn't say no. He doesn't say no. He doesn't have to. And so he goes to the House of Representatives, and they vote, and they vote, and they vote. And nobody wins. Nobody wins. Until Hamilton and a man named George Clinton. And George Clinton is going to be the vice president later. He's governor of New York. George Clinton ends up throwing, and he's a Democratic Republican, not a Federalist, throws his support to Jefferson. So the New York delegation now is divided and ends up voting for Jefferson instead of Burr. And Burr loses the election. And after the election, when Burr shows up for his first day with his little lunch bag and saying, well, that was pretty good. Where do I go, Tom? I'm now your vice president. We're on the same team. Rah! Tom says,
Just find yourself a place to go.
yeah, I've got a few suggestions about where you could go, Aaron. None of which are appropriate given this situation. Why don't you just find yourself a place in a corner and rot there?
Yeah,
You know.
bother me for 4 years.
So Burr becomes vice president of the United States. Is there any likelihood that Burr is going to be the running mate in 1804?
No.
Duh. Not a prayer. Actually, Aaron Burr becomes a really good vice president, better vice president than Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson didn't do much. And well, that's not a whole lot for the vice president to do, but he did preside over a Samuel Cameron is going to be the only Supreme Court justice impeached, and he's going to be tried in the Senate. And one of the jobs of the vice president is to preside over the trial, and he's going to preside over the trial and do it in a very fair and equitable manner. In fact, he's going to have praise. They say that when he left office, his final speech, because the vice president is the president of the Senate, presides over the Senate, his last speech to the Senate, senators were crying. I mean, he was such an engaged vice president. So, anyway, but did Jefferson trust him? No. Jefferson did not trust him. And so he knows it. So in 1803, he does something really interesting. Where is Burr's power base? New York. He does something really unusual for a vice president. He runs for the governorship of New York in 1803, even though he's vice president until 1804.
1805. Right?
1805, into April of 1805. He's going to run for governor. in New York because he assumes that's where his power lies, right? So he runs for governor and he loses. He loses the governor's race. And he loses to a relative unknown because of opposition in New York. And again, Governor Clinton, who will run with Jefferson as his vice president in 1804, they're going to be the team because Jefferson still needs New York. He's going to oppose him, and Hamilton's going to oppose him for governor. And what they're going to find is, they're going to find a letter that Alexander Hamilton wrote that says Aaron Burr, and I'm going to put it as mild as I can, will say Aaron Burr sucks eggs. Aaron Burr is not a nice guy. He's not trustworthy.
Little dirty tricks.
Yes, dirty trick. He will write this letter. And Burr is going to be smeared. That's what they're going to run. They're going to run a smear campaign against Aaron Burr in the governor's race. Now, that's kind of interesting, Hamilton doing it, because Hamilton has already... Maria Reynolds.
Right.
Hubba da hubba. You know, Hamilton's already got his little thing going. But he runs this thing against Aaron Burr. And Aaron Burr loses, and he loses by a landslide. It's not even close. Now, the fact that Aaron Burr now, look at his situation. He is vice president of the United States, right? But
He's on his way.
president doesn't like him. You know, he's not going to be vice president much longer. Runs for governor. Loses. You know, in some ways sounds a little like who? Sounds a little like Richard Nixon. A little bit. Yeah. You know, runs for governor and loses. You know, loses the election, runs for governor, loses. You know, his situation is not good. Now, given everything you were talking about before, all this thing that may emotionally be going on inside of him, he is...
Boiling.
What's that?
Boiling.
Boiling. You know, and if you're right in some of the psychological things you suggested, you know, he is boiling more than maybe someone else would. You know, this is a conspiracy. Imagine this is a conspiracy against me. People don't like me. They're against me. You know, I've got to do something. And what he does is he challenges Hamilton. He's already had one duel. Burr has. They never shot at one another, but he challenges Hamilton to a duel unless Hamilton does what? If Hamilton does apologize, withdraws the letter, and says, all that nasty stuff I said about Aaron Burr isn't true. You know, it isn't true. He's not a bad guy. Unless he does that, we're on. We're on. And Hamilton says, we're on. You know, we're on. Okay, so we've got now Burr. Now understand, this is the sitting vice president of the United States. You know, this isn't a guy just running around. This is the vice president of the United States. You know, has challenged somebody else to a duel. Now they can't do it in New York. Why can't they do it in New York? It's illegal. Well, it's illegal everywhere. People don't realize that. It's illegal everywhere. But in New York, it's a death penalty. If you engage in a duel, even if you don't kill, if you engage in a duel, that's a capital crime. We hang people who engage in duels. But in Jersey, in Jersey, you know, it's against the law, but you know.
If in New York, if it's a capital crime, and they don't shoot each other, both of them hang.
Yes, sir. It's a capital because
both of them would hang.
Now, why would they do that? They want to stop people dueling. You know, stop people. Of course, if they don't shoot, they don't call it a duel. You know, then it's not a real duel. But he challenges Hamilton to a duel. They can't do it in New York, so they go to New Jersey, Weehawken, New Jersey, and Hamilton is there, and Burr is there, and and Burr chooses the ground. What he doesn't realize is that Hamilton's son died fighting a duel at about the same place. Yikes! So Hamilton is there fighting is engaged in a duel at about the same place his son was shot in a duel. Yikes! Okay. And what happens there? Who knows? Who knows? Because both sides give their story. We know one thing for sure. And we know a couple of things. We know that 2 shots were fired. And since they're using, revolvers, but musket pistols. They're using pistols. They both fired. Both people fired, and we know Hamilton was shot right here, and it took out his liver, and the little ball, the bullet, settled in his spine, and so we know that. Now, there's all kinds of other stories around, and which story is right? Don't know. The Burr's people are going to say that they both fired and Burr hit. And understand, these duels, they were using, musket, a smooth bore, and
They were lucky that they were actually.
Lord have mercy. You'd have duels with people shooting at one another and neither one get hit. Because those smooth bores with a ball are not accurate at all. I mean, it's like throwing a knuckleball. He goes everywhere. And so there were a lot of duels where both fired and neither one, and wanted to kill the other one, and it didn't happen. A lot of duels were for show, like guys that posture, and neither one shoot at one another. Well, they die. He gets hit. Now, did Hamilton fire his gun away, from intentionally miss Burr? Don't know. They found letters where he said that's what he was going to do, So they found letters that said, did he actually do it or not? Don't know. We do know that Burr picked the ground, but Hamilton provided the pistols, and he had adjusted the pistols. Usually the pressure on a pistol it was about 10 pounds to fire it, which means it was pretty hard to fire.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that was pretty hard. And he'd adjusted it so that it was a little hair trigger, about 1.5 pounds. So it was much easier to fire. Why did he do that? Don't know. He did it. Don't know why he did it. He wore his glasses. Hamilton wore his glasses. Put on glasses during the duel. He didn't normally wear them. Why did he do that? Don't know. The bottom line is you just don't know. But that doesn't matter. What has Aaron Burr done? He has killed Alexander Hamilton. He has killed Alexander Hamilton. It is against the law in New Jersey. To murder, this is considered murder. So murder is against the law in New Jersey. And so Aaron Burr immediately goes across the river back to New York. Right, he goes back across the river, but he is now wanted for murder in New Jersey. And he is what? Vice President of the United States, wanted for murder. And to really get out of town, he ends up, his daughter is still alive. His daughter's going to die before he does. Is going to die in suspicious situation in a shipwreck. But he goes. She's living down in South Carolina. He goes down to South Carolina until things cool off. And actually, when he comes back, he's arrested and tried for murder, which is really, really interesting. But he is tried in New Jersey for murder and is acquitted. of murder in New Jersey. But the reason he was acquitted is really interesting. He was acquitted. You know why?
Yeah.
Why was he acquitted?
They hauled Hamilton back to New York City.
Because Hamilton
New York City.
Hamilton died in New York and not in New Jersey. And so Burr couldn't be tried for murder in New Jersey.
Oh, jeez.
He couldn't be tried for murder in New York because the action took place in New Jersey. So he was acquitted. But now he is, and he's not going to be Jefferson's running mate. Lost the governorship of New York. He is a murderer. What is he? How would you describe his political future? Not very good. You know, he doesn't have a really good political future. But remember, everything you said about Burr is still true. You know, overachiever, needs to compete, needs to succeed, needs to be the best. This is now the most bizarre stuff. So politically, he is probably not going to be elected anyway, right? So if he is going to run a country, it ain't going to be the United States, right? It's going to have to be somewhere else. Dum bum bum bum. As vice president, Aaron Burr makes contact with Anthony Merry. Now, Anthony Merry was a really happy guy. He was the
We should be.
yeah, he was really happy. Had few bouts of depression, but by and large, yeah, pretty happy. He was the British minister to the United States, and Burr lays out a plan for it, and it's a good one. What would be in the interest of Britain with regard to the United States? Does Britain really want? Now we're talking about 1803, 1804. Does Britain want to govern the United States again? Well, probably not. What they want to do, though, is they want to be able to exploit the United States. One of the things that imperial powers find is you make more money off of territory if you can economically exploit them than if you have to govern them. Because if you have to govern them, then you have to do what? Pick up their garbage, police their streets, collect taxes. You got to do all that stuff, which means you've got to pay for it.
Right, a lot of cost.
That's right. Let them do all the dirty stuff, and you just exploit them. Make as much money as you want off of them. Okay, he raises a possibility. If the United States would, but you don't want Britain doesn't want a strong United States, right? Because Britain is engaged in a war with France now, continual series of wars with France. You've got Canada right here, British colony up in Canada. You don't want a strong United States. Britain's got interests to the west. Weak United States would be nice. Trapped along the coast would be nice. That would be nice. The United States has already bought Louisiana Purchase. So it's already bought a whole bunch of land. Britain, it's in their interest to limit the United States. He lays out a proposition. What if there could be another country in the southwest of the United States, to the southwest of the United States? What country controls that territory now? Not Mexico yet. Spain controls it. This is all Spanish territory. Are the Spanish superpower? No. Spanish aren't a superpower. They're eating that chicken and rice stuff. They're happy. But they're not a superpower anymore. So their territory is lightly defended. Burr says, what if we form a new country right there in the Spanish territory? And this country would have enough resources to compete with, especially if it had access to New Orleans, could compete with the United States. In fact, who knows, he presents, and they found letters to indicate this. Who knows, it might even be strong enough to take Washington itself. And all I need is your help. And I don't even want your people. It's going to be mine. I just want your financial support and the promise that you're not going to intervene. Okay? As Vice President of the United States. Now, to make sure he doesn't run into trouble, he makes a deal with a guy named James Wilkinson. General Wilkinson. Now, General Wilkinson is he is a trip.
Yeah.
He's
a real bad one.
he's a piece of work. Close to Aaron Burr, has been close a long time. One of the times Burr has influence over Jefferson, minor influence, convinces Jefferson to appoint General Wilkinson as general in charge of the Western territories, primarily Louisiana Territory. And he's going to be centered in New Orleans. Now, General Wilkinson is a good patriot who is on the Spanish payroll. So the Spanish government is paying General Wilkinson, and of course the United States doesn't know that, but General Wilkinson knows it, and he commands American troops close to Aaron Burr. Aaron Burr and Wilkinson work out this plan that Wilkinson, if Burr, and this is crazy, because he had already, before he was appointed to this office, he'd already been implicated in another plot about 10 years before to separate Kentucky and Tennessee from the United States and form another country. Yeah, him! He's in charge of American troops out west. Makes a deal with Burr. That he will, Burr, and this is really good, makes a deal. So he and Burr are going to work together and are going to form this new country in Spanish territory. Okay? All right. Where you got it. Step number one. Well, I guess Wilkinson is step number one. Burr leases 40,000 acres of land in New Spain. 40,000. Now, what is he going to do with this land? What do you think Burr is going to use with this land?
Where he's going to start his...
Going to be the place where he train his troops, right? That's going to be the place where it's going to start. You're wrong, Sandy. Burr is going to do what? Farming. He is a farming man. He's going to farm the 40,000 acres.
I don't believe it.
But Sandy, he's Vice President of the United States. My gosh. If Mike Pence said he's going to farm land in Texas, do you believe him? All right. He's Vice President of the United States. So he leases his land and he's going to farm it. And what he does is he's trying to recruit
Farmers.
So he goes out recruiting farmers to farm his land. And farmers need to bring with them things like guns, things like artillery, things like guns, Okay, so he's recruiting these guys to farm his land, right? And Wilkinson knows about it. No problem. The Spanish know about it. Because the Spanish, Spain is at a place where they recognize they can't defend this land anymore. They just don't want the United States to have it. Because then they've got, at best, a real strong power to the north. So they have no interest in the United States, acquiring this land. And if it ain't going to be the United States, it's going to be somebody else. And Burr is as good as anybody. So he gets this land, recruits volunteers. What kind of volunteers? Farmers.
Now he's still vice president all this.
Now he's not.
Oh, okay.
It started, he's not vice president. But he still has, some of the matches that say vice president. He has the hat. He has a hat that says, in fact, I think they had a T-shirt that says, "Kiss me, I'm a vice president." Something like that. Anyway, Wilkinson, because Wilkinson is such a man of high moral quality. As soon as word starts to drift, little gossipy words drift east, and Jefferson sort of gets wind that this guy he doesn't trust anyway is doing some suspicious things, General Wilkinson decides, you know, which side should I be on? You know, I was on this side for a while, and now the wind is blowing in the other direction, so I'm going to be on this side for a while. And so he informs on Burr. He informs on Burr. And in fact, he volunteers to use his forces to shut Burr down. Well, the governor of Ohio is getting suspicious too, because Burr has accumulated his men and their equipment on this island in the middle of the Ohio River. And the governor of Ohio starts thinking, that's interesting. Yeah, that seems kind of strange. So Burr's got evidence. And Burr, does Jefferson like Burr?
No.
Does he trust him?
No.
And so Jefferson decides, I am going to be on Aaron Burr like white on rice. And I am going to make him pay for everything. Now understand, Burr, and Burr gets wind of it. It's like 40 people with guns. So they round them up and ship them away. So it's not a big rebellion. They're floating down the Mississippi. Burr, hightails it to the west. Now he's out in the west somewhere. And he's tried, though, in Kentucky for something, because he's violated some Kentucky law and is acquitted. But Jefferson says, I'm going to make an example of Aaron Burr. I want him arrested and tried for what? Treason. Now understand, treason is really tricky. Because to commit treason, you have to do what? Well, you need to commit an act. And what is the act you need to commit? It's a 3-letter word found around every married person's house. War. Okay? It's gotta be a war, right? You can't talk about war you have to commit an act of war in order for it to be treason. And that's going to be Jefferson knows that. But he wants Burr tried, and Burr is arrested, brought to Richmond, Virginia, the center of the universe, and is tried for treason. The Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court presides over the trial, and Wilkinson is brought in. Andrew Jackson, by the way, is brought in as a witness because he is somehow connected because he's out west. Wilkinson comes in as a witness, because we got a real trial going on, and he produces a letter of what Burr told him to do. This is the smoking gun. He's got the letter right there in front of him. Everybody sees it. There's just one small problem with the letter he produces. It's in his handwriting. Now, don't laugh. You see, he wanted to. This is what he said. He wanted to make sure he preserved it. And we're talking about a time when you don't Xerox something or scan it. So if you want a copy of something, you got to copy it, right? And that's what he did. So he would always have a copy, and and this always happens, one of those dumb moments. In the move, when we were moving, my wife I thought she put it here. The dog ate, then the dog was chewing something that looked like it. The letter, he couldn't produce a real letter. And so he produces his own copy in his own handwriting. And after the courtroom, they settle it down because everybody's laughing. They say, do we really need to go on with this? And they say, no. John Marshall says, go home.
The other thing, Marshall and Jefferson weren't exactly buddies.
No, Jefferson, yes. But yeah, Marshall had no love lost for Jefferson. But this becomes an important case. Because if, and you know, this is in our future too, you know, because all of these are with our future. You know, if Jefferson had pulled it off, if he had manipulated the situation and he'd have been convicted of treason, you know, presidents were going to use that all the time. You know, if somebody does something they don't like, treason, 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 treason. What Marshall did was he had the standard of proof high enough that presidents wouldn't be able to use it to punish political enemies, which is always been a danger for over 200 years. You know, the presidents would do that. We've come closer at different times, but always there. All right, so we've got the trial. Now, what is Burr's future in the United States? None. So he goes to Europe, travels all over Europe, spends a lot of time in England, self-imposed exile. The only way he's able to do it, you think leasing all that land was cheap? You think he's in debt?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So part of the reason he leaves, a friend of his loans him money that he never gets back. Burr goes to Europe. Now this is Aaron Burr. One of the things he does in Europe is he tries to make appointments, right, with everybody, all kinds of leaders, and he pulls out his map and says, if you finance this, I'll set part of North America free and make it my own country. And different leaders say, oh, it looks good, I'll get back with you.
But
You know, I'll get back with. Yeah, I mean, he goes talks to Napoleon. Napoleon Bonaparte is still in charge of France, and he assumes Napoleon, engaged in this war with England, would really jump on the opportunity to disrupt things. And Napoleon says, I don't think so. I've got a much better idea. That's what Napoleon says to him. I've got a much better idea. I'll tell you, I'll get back to you after my successful invasion of Russia. Once I get back from successfully invading Russia, then we'll make plans. So he ends up coming back to the United States in 1812. Like I said, he changes his name and goes under the name Edwards because Burr owes everybody money. So he goes under the name of Edwards, which is his whole family name, and marries Jamel, Eliza Jamel, in 1833. Now understand, Aaron Burr is like 71 years old, and marries this widow woman who is, well, I want to say well endowed, but that could mean different things to different people. She has a lot of money. She has a lot of money, and what's that?
wealthy.
Yeah, that's. I want to clarify. She has a lot of money, and he marries her, and she's all excited. She's 19 years younger than he.
Did she know who he was?
Well, I don't know whether she knew who he was. I don't know. You know, he was vice president. He had a habit of saying, you know, well, I was vice president.
Did she know he was Aaron Burr?
I don't know. I don't know. But she married him. And she noticed, though, after she married him, I said she was well endowed. Her endowment started going
down.
because Aaron Burr was still looking to make it, and it starts going back down. And they are married for 4 months, and she divorces him. And she divorces him after 4 months. She divorces him after 4 months, and she hires as her lawyer to what's that? Oh, yes, she did. She did have to. They didn't, but she did. She hires as her lawyer a name that we've heard before. She hires Alexander Hamilton Jr. to represent her, and the divorce is final in 1836, but it really doesn't bother Aaron Burr because he dies right right after the divorce becomes final. And that's his death mask. So that is the sad life of Aaron Burr. And just when you go home, just think about how maybe the things we started at the beginning, behind the 8 ball, were certain. Was his life such that it was almost inevitable, or there was an inevitability to him ending up here? Was it bad choices? Was it, I don't know. But this is the life of Aaron Burr.
Could have been the right choice at the wrong time.
Certainly one of the founding fathers, and he was a founding father, that we don't talk about too much. We don't have Aaron Burr Day. Yeah. All right, go home.
I heard that Aaron Burr actually kept Hamilton from another duel earlier on. Did you ever read about that?
I hadn't heard of that. It could be. It certainly could be. I know that I believe that Aaron Burr was involved as a second in but not as a participant. He was a participant in the 1790s, but never. They reconciled before Charles.
What a life, huh?
Yeah, it really was. All for the sake of honor. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what it was. It was all for the sake of honor. You had to. You fought a duel to protect your name.
Yeah.
So you had to kill somebody.
I know we're gonna.
See you tomorrow. See you tomorrow.
You didn't sing?
I didn't sing. I think everybody would have been happy.
You could do Prince George.
Oh, that's wonderful. He was nominated for a Tony. It's not featured actor, but that's supporting. Sure. But he was in that little tiny role he played. He was still nominated for a Tony. He didn't win it, but he was
Why did you do that?
That was a good one.
This is fascinating.
Oh, I love this guy.
Still single?
Yeah.
I'm going to follow.
How you been? Winner's week. Now that's really interesting.
I would have chosen.
Yeah.
And you know what? John was just the night that I
They didn't teach any history the whole time.